Can I sneak a call in here?
Go ahead.
Cuddyer is going to be green lighted here, and he's going to get a run on the board for the Twins.
That's a heck of a call right there.
Into the upper deck.
That is a heck of a call.
Welcome to the 2024 Minnesota State High School Baseball Coaches Association January Clinic held with Minnesota Twins Community Fund. We're very fortunate to be joined by Michael Cuddyer, former Minnesota Twin. And Michael, we appreciate your time and thanks for joining us on this. And tell everybody, because we all want to know what's Michael Cuddyer up to these days.
A lot. My son is 15. He's a sophomore in high school, plays for his high school team, and I also coach the summer team that he plays on. And I've been coaching that team for a while. This past year, I had the good opportunity to manage the 18U national team in Taiwan. So we went there and I did that. So I worked closely with USA Baseball in various roles. And
that went well, right?
It went well. I mean, we came in fourth, which was tough, but we ran into a few problems over there and a couple pitchers that shut us down. So unfortunately, we finished in fourth. But it was a good experience for the kids, good experience for myself. LaTroy Hawkins was my pitching coach, which was fun as well. So, and then I'm also still employed with the Twins, special assistant to baseball operations with them. And that just comes with a whatever, basically I'm at whatever they need me to do.
That's cool. So do you get back to Minnesota often?
Every so often. I come back I go to spring training for a week or so, work with various players or, again, whatever they feel like I can add value to. Come back for various events, whether it's the Hall of Fame and things like that.
Sure. I think we'll just get right into some hitting thoughts that you've had. And I'm sure that when you're brought down to spring training, probably one of the things that you're asked to do is talk hitting with some of the players. Talk about approach. Talk about maybe some of those things that you would say to young hitters.
Well, I mean that's a broad comment, right? And I think we can start there. I think it's tough, and now obviously with my son being at the high school level, and I'm working with their high school too, is time. Time is tough. You have to try and get 14, 18, 19, 20 hitters, whatever it is that's in your program, in and out in basically 2 hours or 2.5 hours of a practice, while still working on team defense and still working on your individual skills. So it is a very hard and challenging thing that I see at the high school level and collegiate level, because in pro ball, our biggest resource is time. I mean, if I need somebody to be throwing me BP for 4 hours, somebody's there to throw me BP for 4 hours. and I'm willing to put in that time and have that time. But I think the biggest thing is with high school athletes is you have to come up with some type of general philosophy of what kind of team you're going to be, what kind of offense you're going to try and establish. And once you can establish that philosophy, once you can establish that identity as a team, well, then you can start getting your hitters to kind of buy in. And now you can start creating drills or stations in your practices to start going toward that identity and start going toward what it is that you want to accomplish and how you want to score runs and ultimately win games.
So do you subscribe? Are you teaching your players hit and runs and bunting to all sides, or bunting to all parts of the field, and moving runners around, quality at bats, that kind of thing?
Yeah, quality at bats. I'm huge in quality at bats, and I'm huge at quality at bats. One, because it helps you win games, but two, it as a offensive player, it keeps you sane. I used to quality at bats when I played in the big leagues wasn't really emphasized, so to speak. But I used to invent quality at bats in my head, and it wasn't the 8 ways to get a quality at bats like you see now, because nobody really talked about that. But I wanted to know that if I went 0 for 4, but I moved 2 guys into scoring position, and those 2 guys scored, that I had a successful day. I didn't just go home and beat myself up because I was 0 for 4 with two punch outs. Right. Those two ground outs, or that fly ball I hit with the man on second, nobody out, Yeah, I didn't drive him in, but Justin Morneau behind me did drive him in and got a sack fly, and we scored a run. So I used to invent in my head quality at bats. So I am a huge proponent of quality at bats. As far as the other stuff, I think that's where you have to establish the identity of your team, and it could change every year. I mean, if
Based
you've
on who you
got
have.
yeah, I mean, if you've got a team that has 6 seniors in your lineup that are all D1 or collegiate players that are going to go play college baseball that can hit some balls into gap and drive some runs, especially at the high school level. I mean, maybe we don't need to focus too much on bunting and hitting and running. Maybe we focus on just trying to get our guy to second base. And if we can do that and with nobody out, the 3 guys coming up behind him is going to drive them in and probably going to get in themselves in the scoring position as well. If I've got a team where it's loaded with, underclassmen that are physically not developed yet, maybe we do need to bunt and hit and run and move guys over. So I think as a coach, the more we can educate ourselves in all facets of the way we can win a game, then we're able to establish the identity in the fall of who's coming back and what kind of team we're going to have, and then start talking and having those conversations early. So when the season rolls around in Minnesota, I know mid-March, April, you can just hit the ground running and cater all of your drills and all of your practice sessions to that.
You'll probably laugh about this, but we've had warmer weather in December lately.
I know. I check. I see it. I still try and prepare myself for Twins Fest. So I'm still looking at the trends, and it has been warm.
52 yesterday, December 14th. So pretty cool. Do you guys practice inside a lot, or are you outside mostly?
No, we do. We do practice inside quite a bit. It's not necessarily cold, but it rains quite a bit here in Virginia. So we are limited inside. And when it comes to inside, and I know it's more work for the coach, I prefer working with smaller groups. So maybe you have a group of 8 come in for an hour, and you have maybe 4 stations of 2. Or 2 stations of 4, and then another group of 8 come in for the next hour. And, even though you might, as a coach, be there an extra half hour or 45 minutes, as opposed to having everybody in at one time, I feel like, especially indoors, that's the time when you don't need to rush through your drills. You don't need to rush through your stations. We all know that at high school, especially a high school practice, it's very hard to give individual attention because usually it's either one coach or at the most two coaches. It's hard to say, yes, I'm going to coach you for 15 minutes while the other 7 kids are just kind of doing whatever. Because ultimately what happens is there just becomes a backup in one of the cages and 7 guys are just sitting there waiting. Well, so I prefer smaller groups and that's where you can really hone in on individual skills.
And the other thing is you're trying to develop hitting coaches in a sense. I mean, you want your players to be able to identify areas that maybe need help or feel things that, and then have maybe a variety of drills or different things that they can do to work on those things and slow things down, isolate, and then maybe speed it back up.
No doubt. And when we create our stations, when I create our stations indoors, we'll have station 1 and have 3 different drills. So, because each kid doesn't have to do the same drill. Each kid doesn't have the same things that they're trying to enhance or improve on. So, yes, station 1 may be a T drill or a T station, I should say, with 4 different drills that they can then choose from based on the conversations that we've had leading into that practice for that particular player.
Do you use a lot of video, or do you just watch and talk? What types of in order to get to that point, you got to have some thoughts behind that.
No doubt. We'll use video. I like video just so they can correlate what it looks like with what they feel. I'm more of feel, and then you see the results of what that felt like. Yeah. And what I do now with a lot of players, because I did this with my own career, is when I hit a ball well, and I felt everything that I wanted to feel. I felt the feeling in my right butt cheek that I wanted to feel. I felt the feeling in my right lats, my backside, I should say, because I'm right-handed hitter, my backside lat or my backside hamstring, and I felt it the way I wanted to feel it, I would take about 15 seconds to 20 seconds before I got back in the box, because I'm literally doing a checklist down that side of my body of what felt right.
Mhm.
And that way, when I take a bad swing, I'm not now saying, oh man, I flew open. Now I'm just trying to recall all of those good feelings. And typically what I found, and what again with worked for me, is when I recalled the good feelings, I very rarely had two bag swings in a row in a cage. To whereas if you're starting to be like, man, I flew open on that one, chances are you're going to fly open again on the next one. That's the way the brain works.
Yeah.
So I really try and get kids when they and I talk to them all the time when they take a good swing. I'm like, did that feel like what it was supposed to feel like? And if they said yes, I give them about 15 seconds to close their eyes and truly feel where in that body it felt, what it felt like, and then get back in and try and recall that feeling. And then when it's a bad swing, I literally have them stay in the box, recall the good feeling, and then take another hack.
It's hugely important for that, to be able to get that brain wired. And there's
Mhm.
there's research that comes out all the time on that as well.
Sure.
And
And the goal is, like you said, the goal is for me after 3-4 weeks is all I'm doing is I'm just a BP thrower. I'm just a T ball guy. I stop being a coach, because you become reliant on me. Well, then you're dependent, and I need you to be dependent on yourself.
I know I'll get guys in the dugout that'll say, "Did you get video on that? Did you see something?" And I'm like, the first question exactly is, "Well, what did it feel like to you? Because you're 45 feet away from me, and
Mhm.
go through your thoughts and progressions on things."
Right.
And kids sometimes don't have that confidence to do that.
True. And I think a lot of times as coaches, we become enablers, and because we want to assort, and this is not for everybody, but
Yeah.
because we want to assert the fact that we're the coach, that we feel like we have to coach,
Yeah.
right? Because our name is Coach Michael or whoever. Okay, well, I'm the coach. I have to coach. Well, the goal is to get, like you just said, let them become their own coach, so they can go with their buddies in the cage when you're not there and still accomplish things.
Mm-hmm. When you were talking about T work and such, and I would assume there's a low T, high T element, and placement on the plate out front, side to side, and working both edges. And you start talking about other types of drills. Do you have some favorites and things you like to have?
Again, it's individual. I will say this is, and again, I haven't worked with every high school player in the country, but the high school kids that I have worked with, T drills are, you have to know what you're doing with a T. If you don't know what you're doing with a T, I would recommend never, ever, ever touching the T, especially in high school, because what you see a lot with high school players in T drill is they immediately take the front shoulder down to the ball. And because they take it down to the ball, it's really hard for them now to get on plane to be able to hit the ball without manipulating it. And you don't want to have to manipulate your swing in order to hit the ball off the tee. And you can put the
movement. I mean,
what's that?
It's an added false movement that slows you down.
Correct. And so I always caution high school kids with the tee. But I also I tell kids all the time, take dry swings before you hit. If you're by yourself and you don't have a partner to flip you or throw you, I would recommend taking dry swings as opposed to hitting off of a tee. Just because you can create, and it also helps with your visualization by taking dry swings, but you're not limited to where the ball is to have to hit it, to have to put your body in the position to be able to hit it. You can envision a pitch coming in, and you're not going to hinder yourself by taking that dry swing.
Goes with your philosophy too, of also how does it feel? What are you?
Right.
What's coming through? What are you thinking about? What are you looking for? It hones in all parts of your brain with that. Do you then have guys swinging their own bats? Do you use weighted bats, smaller bats? There's all sorts of things out there.
Yeah, I love changing the medium that they're using. I love changing bats. I like, and again, we're talking about high school athletes and younger, not necessarily professional or elite level college athletes. I would prefer putting the tool in their hand that I feel like is going to put them in the right position to swing, as opposed to telling them what their body needs to be, the position their body needs to be in. So if I feel like they're pushing their hands, I want to give them the most end-loaded bat that I can give them, the heaviest, most end-loaded bat that I can give them, because you can't push that bat through the zone. You literally have to use the backside of your body to be able to get the slack out of your swing to get that barrel through the zone. So I prefer giving them the tools and just telling them to swing it, because typically their body figures out a way to do it.
Right. And that's interesting because as you know, I mean, your kid's 15, you can buy balanced bats, end loaded bats, all these things.
And there's reasons for all of them. If I see a player who's dumping the barrel, then I'll put a hand loaded bat into his hands, and he's not going to dump the barrel. He's going to get that bat through the zone with his hands. And that's where he kind of, the taboo word, that's where he kind of does need to push the bat through the zone, because he's basically just dragging it. We also don't want the dragging. So I like having different tools in my tool belt, so to speak, and give those tools to the players, as opposed to saying, stop pushing your hand through. Well, they don't know they're pushing their hands, or else they would stop.
Right. When you're also practicing inside, you said tee is important if you're using it right. I would imagine you have some cages that you're working with. Are guys just, you're not, I don't know if, are you using the whole cage? Are you splitting it, doing different things in those cages so that you can maximize?
Sure.
What are you thinking?
Yeah, it depends on your space. I mean, you got to get creative. And I think that's the most fun thing for a coach is creativity and figuring out ways to be efficient with what you have and the space that you have. We'll divide cages up. We'll make 2 cages, sock nets, side tosses. I'm a big proponent of, and again, you have to know how to use it, but hitting the heavy bags. I'm a big proponent with the heavy bags to work on connection. And
talk more about heavy bags for those who might not know.
Yeah, so the bags that I have, Mule Tech is the company that I bought these from, and they've got a big contraption. I mean, it literally looks like a heavy bag that a boxer would use, but it's built to be hit with a bat.
Yeah.
I think back in the day, Lance Berkman was a spokesman for it or something. And
you're right. Does that Mule Tech and Berkman is that kind of like a version of the old hitting a tire?
Yeah, 100%.
And just contact strength and things like that.
100%. And again, what I use it for is incorporating your back hip. So my philosophy, my theory on mechanics now, is that the slack will get out of the swing, the biomechanics. It will all come out, but it all is generated from the engine of your hips, and more specifically the back hip, back right butt cheek if you're a right-handed hitter. And then with the heavy bag, it's literally you're just connected, and it's almost like you're delivering a Mike Tyson upper gut punch to the heavy bag, and then you make contact and you immediately come back, and then you have to stop the bag as it comes back. And I use the heavy bag that they provide. And then I also have, if you go on their site and see the product, they have a little junior bag as well, and it's on the same contraption. So they'll do 4 sets of call them 31s, where you're hitting it, coming back and stopping the heavy bag, do 3 or 4 sets of those, immediately go to the smaller bag and just try and hit that thing, make it do as many rotations as you can. And it's fun. It breaks up the work. They challenge themselves. I get 3 around. I got 4 rotations, things like that.
Do you have a goal for number of swings in overall, like when you're going through things, or just kind of individual there?
Again, it's individual there. Again, and I draw a lot of the experiences that I had.
Yeah.
Days that I'm swinging really well, I took 250, 300, 400 swings. Days that I wasn't swinging well, I could maybe only take 4 swings and I was done. I was out because I never wanted to reinforce a bad feeling. I never wanted to have to search to find it that day. I always felt like if I didn't have it that day and I knew after, we'll call it, just throw a number out there, 15 swings, I wasn't going to find it anyway. So I would just leave. And if I had a game that day, well, shoot, now I just got to go out and compete. It ain't no big deal. Like I just go, I'm going to win on my competition level. But days that I felt good, days that I was swinging well, I wanted to continue to reinforce those good swings. I wanted to continue to reinforce that confidence. I never, ever wanted to beat myself up in a batting cage.
When you get outside, then guys are grooved. They're ready to go. They're feeling good. Do you do a lot of whole field hitting? Do you have some cage work that you have going on? What types of things are you doing when you get outside?
I definitely love, whole field hitting. There's no better feedback than seeing it on a baseball field, right? And no better understanding, because I mean the cage fools us. I mean, I know when I was a kid, hit the back of the cage, hit the back of the cage, hit the back of the cage. Well, unless I'm in a 120-foot cage, the back of the cage is not a very good place to hit a ball.
Right.
Typically you're in a 50 to 70-foot cage. If I hit the back of the cage in a 55-foot cage, well, that's going to be right at the pitcher's head.
Right.
And if it's right at the pitcher's head, unless I'm hitting it 180 miles an hour, it's going to be a 2 or 3 hopper to the shortstop.
Yep.
And that's not what we want. So the cage can be deceiving a lot. So I definitely, anytime you can get on a field and see the flight of the ball, 100%.
I would imagine, you don't, like us in Minnesota, when we get outside, there aren't a lot of days before the games and the seasons to be able to get some quality hitting work in. And if you're out there on the field, normally the field's in not great shape. There's wet spots all over the place. In season and the things that you're doing in between games then, and after you've had some time, of course, you're talking to kids, you have some obviously individual types of discussions, and people are working on different things based on who they are and how they're built. But you have some go-to types of work sessions or types of habits that you want guys to continually be thinking about in between games?
Sure. Well, if we're talking about in season, then hopefully we've already created a package of what that player likes and enjoys. And that's the thing too, is it can't just be what you like as a coach. The player has to like it too. If the player doesn't like it, you're never going to get buy-in. You're never going to get anything that they're just going to be, damn, I have to do this again.
Right.
You know what I mean? So like, as a coach, you're going to have to give a little bit. You're going to have conversations to where, I remember when my son was young, like 11, 12, I'd be like, all right, dude, you get to pick 3 drills. I get to pick 1. And he's like, all right, that's fair. He says, so he gets to do 3, whatever 3 drills that he likes and feels good, he gets to do it. But I better be really specific in that drill that I'm picking and feel like this is going to help him, because that's my only one shot that I got. 100
different things in your head that, there's those 3, but I want you to do this one.
Right.
So,
But if I say, all right, I'm going to tell you 3 drills and you only get to pick 1, well, he's the one that's got to hit and he's not going to buy in. So that was kind of the way that I worked it with him. And it's same conversations with other players. You got to let them do what they enjoy to do.
For sure.
If they like going on the field and facing 30-mile-an-hour BP to try and hit it as far as they can, let them do that, because that's fun for them. It makes them want to hit, which ultimately now they're going to buy into what you're trying to tell them.
Mm-hmm. You have times when you just tell guys, hey, get out there, grip that thing, and just give it a whack. And
more times than not. That's at the end of the day, they're the ones that are stepping in the box, not us. Yeah. So I mean, they got to be confident when they get in there. They got to feel good. I mean, I at a high school level, I don't like beating them up. Right. Are there days where they got to work on velo? Yeah, there are days where they got to just understand how fast they've got to move in their core to be able to catch up to a higher velo pitch. But in my opinion, you're not facing high velo all often. And when I mean high velo in high school, we're talking about 88, 90, maybe. I would train 88, 90 once every other week if they're about to face a guy that's about to, just to understand how fast their body needs to move to get that.
Do you use the machine, or can Coach Cuddyer ramp it up to 88 to 90 from about 40 feet?
Coach Cuddyer can do that. Yeah, he can do that. But I also like doing machine from 55 feet if you have that capability to do it. Just because space, I mean, we can all do the equation where, 50 miles an hour from 45 feet is equivalent to 90 miles an hour, but it's not really. The space, you need to learn how to hit in the space.
Mm-hmm.
I can throw 10 miles an hour from 15 feet, and that feels like I'm all like suffocated and it's just beating me. To whereas you throw 90 miles an hour from 60 feet, man, I feel like I got all the time in the world. So the space is a big factor too.
Do you it just kind of popped into my head, but I read something about Wade Boggs at one point. He had such amazing eyesight. He could see grips and how pitchers moved, just the slip of the wrist, just the movement with fingers. Could you, or did you know hitters that were able to, and how do you teach that?
No, I absolutely did. I used to, some people look at me like I've got three heads. There's certain pitchers where I could see their fastball. It looked a little like when they threw a fastball out of their hand, it almost looked like a narrow ball. And then when they threw their curveball, it looked like a whole ball. So they would give me that. And it's not like you have time to process, oh, here comes a curveball. Yeah, you don't have time but it gives you that little teeny fraction of a second advantage to be able to just stay back just that teeny bit, or even, and I don't want to say stay back, give you the intent of, I got a fraction of a second longer. How you teach that, I don't know, but I did. Pat Rousler was our assistant hitting coach when I was with the Mets. And he used to do a drill with a lot of guys that a lot of guys liked. And I'm sure everybody's seen it. It's nothing new, but he would do colors and shapes on a ball. He'd have red triangles and black circles, and he would have them on balls. And you got to be able to throw a four-seam pitch. You can't throw come to the side. But if you're a coach and you can throw a true four-seamer, I think that's a really good way. And I do that with a lot of the kids on the team. And they can just tell me what you see. Do you see a color? Say it out loud. Do you see a color and a shape? Awesome. That's even better. And it gets them, it teaches them, because now they're trying to cheat. They're trying to see me pull the ball out of the bucket and see if they can see it before I throw it. And that's good too. I tell them, I encourage them, if you can cheat and see it before I throw it, good, because that's what they're doing. That's what you got to do when you're in the box. You got to look at the ball all the time.
Yeah, pick it up as soon as you possibly can. Yeah.
And for as long as you can.
Right. Gives yourself, especially when you're talking about velo and dealing with that and everything. This is awesome stuff on hitting, and we could talk, at least I could talk all day. I wanted to get into some other topics, if that's okay. And I think I'm going to we'll talk, maybe we'll talk outfield another time, but I wanted to talk some rapid fire stuff, if you're okay with that, because but real quick before we move on, I know we'll talk about outfield another time, but I do want to make a point about outfield, especially in high school, after watching a lot of high school games over the last 5 to 8 years since I've been retired. Hit your cutoff man. If there's one thing to teach to a high school outfielder, is hit your cutoff man, because kids in high school aren't good enough to hit balls in the gap consistently. So you have to keep them at the minimum 90 feet as you possibly can. You start overthrowing guys, the snowball fights start to happen, and that's ultimately when you lose games. Hit your cutoff man. As a team defense, you can't control a ball that's 10 feet in the air. And base runners with good coaching or good instincts are circling the bases and taking extra steps.
And very rarely are we in the right spots to back guys up.
Yeah.
At high school. We just don't have time to teach it and micromanage it. So you start throwing balls over guys. Very rarely is there somebody behind them to back it up, and that's when you see the circus come to town.
That had to be quite the experience going back to youth baseball and watching kids play and learn the game, and from where you were at for 15 years or more. And,
well, and it was, and in my opinion, the good teams is the teams that don't make mistakes. They're not the most talented teams. They just don't make the mistakes. The pitchers throw the strikes, the outfielders hit the cutoff men, and the infielders, when they catch it, they don't throw it away.
You weren't drafted as an outfielder, were you?
No, I was drafted as a shortstop.
And you had to acquire outfield skills along the way.
Sure.
Yeah. And I'm sure as a shortstop, it would make you upset when guys overthrew you in high school or whatnot. And so that whole thing of hitting cutoff men.
I led the league. I led the major leagues in assists 2 years in a row. And, obviously we're talking Minnesota, so you've seen me play. I would say 50%, if not 70%, Nick Punto threw the guy out.
But you gave him a chance.
100%. No, you hit the cutoff man.
In game, right?
Yeah.
All right. Let's do a little rapid fire if you're okay with that, then we'll wrap up. All right, here we go. You don't have a lot of time to think about these, but just do your best. All right,
okay.
Best stadium.
On the road?
Anywhere.
Man, there's too many good ones.
Give me Coors Field.
Coors Field, Fenway, Target Field. We'll go with those three. And Camden.
Yeah. Okay. Favorite city?
Chicago.
Awesome. Pitchers. Let's talk pitchers. Nasty curveball.
Gavin Floyd.
Interesting. Fear struck in the hitter.
Was never feared. I was never scared of anybody.
Did anybody else talk about people that they might have been like, oh man?
I guess Randy Johnson.
Yeah. Straight heat. Who could blow it by people?
Joel Zumaya.
Really?
Slide step at 103. Oof.
Wow. I think I know probably the answer to this next one, but best changeup.
Johan.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I think you can go on YouTube and check out like literally 5 minutes of Johan Santana changeup.
Yeah, no question.
Your impression of Target Field when it opened up.
Shoot, the first ball I hit was a homer right down the left field line against Scott Schoenweiss that would not have left the Metrodome. So my first impression was that it was a hitter's park. And then about a month later, that first couple of years, it was not a hitter's park. It was not the way it plays right now. So the first impression was that it was a hitter's park. After about a month, I thought it was a graveyard.
What accounts for that? Because was it Brian Dozier and maybe some of the success he had, or other people that just were like, all right, I figured out the spot I need to launch the baseball out of this place, or what was it?
Yeah, but now you're even seeing balls go over that batter's eye, and I mean that didn't happen those first few years.
Oh, so maybe it's a baseball thing or something.
Who knows? Jason Giambi. I remember when Target Field was first built, he was talking about how it takes 5 years for the concrete to settle, and when the concrete settles, the atmosphere in the park changes. And I mean, that's about when balls started flying out there. It was about 5 years after it was built.
Interesting. That concrete lack of settling probably cost some guys some money, huh?
Yeah. You can go back and find those articles. He said it, and we all thought he was nuts, but
that's amazing. Hitters that you admired.
Adrian Beltre, Joe Mauer, Justin Morneau. I mean, there's so many. I mean, really anybody in the big leagues. I admire anybody that can hit in the big leagues. But those are the ones that pop into my mind right out the gate.
Your dream foursome to hit in for pregame BP. You're included.
Mickey Mantle, Babe Ruth, and Josh Hamilton.
Love it. All right, I'm going to say some names. Just tell me what you think. Terry Ryan.
Man, so emotional when I hear that name. He stuck up for me. He was always in my corner. Respect. That's probably the best one. If I'm going to say one word, respect. Yeah,
I think you get a lot of that here in Minnesota from fellow coaches. Nothing but class. Joe Mauer.
Consistent.
Justin Morneau.
Sack flies. I used to get on. When I hit behind him, I used to get so mad because it'd be like a 3-0 count, man on third and 1 out, and he would swing a ball at his eyes and get a sack fly, and then I'd have to come up the bat with 2 outs and nobody on.
Another guy who robbed money from you. Yeah.
If I'm gonna be honest and say one word about Morney, it's leader.
Yeah. Nick Punto.
Igniter.
All right. Your bat length, did that change in ounces and the size of the bat throughout your career?
Ounces changed. Length was always 34. But I used the same model I used Ash in Louisville and the same model my whole career.
Interesting.
Ounces would change.
What model was that?
It was called a C360, which they built on my specs. It's basically an I-13 with a flared handle.
Gotcha. Flared handle. I suppose. Yeah.
Not flared like super flared, but something that just went into the contour of my hand.
Right. Feeling of being drafted.
I was elated. I mean, I was happy, but I also understood that if I was going to make this decision to sign professionally, that it was the beginning, not the destination, not the end.
Not everybody sees it that way, do they? I mean,
no. And I tell kids all the time, when you commit to a college or you sign your letter of intent to the college or you step foot on the campus or you get drafted, that's the beginning. That's not the destination. That's not the end. You start looking at that as the destination and you set yourself up to fail.
Yeah. Now you're in a position to help others with their goals and their draftability. Thoughts on that?
Mm-hmm. I don't really look at it like that. All I want them to do is I try and help them to be their best version of themselves that day with what they bring to the field or what they bring to the batting cage or what they bring to my house, whatever they're bringing that day, whatever they have that day.
Best version.
I want you to be the best at it that day and understand that what you have to bring today is not going to be what you have to bring tomorrow, and it's going to change. And I just want you to, whatever it is, whatever's in your toolbox, make that toolbox work that day.
And the last one I have for you, and I appreciate the time today, is what's a surprising fact we don't know in Minnesota about Michael Cuddyer?
Oh God, I spent so much time there and I was so open that I don't know if there's anything that
you're an open book.
Yeah, I tried to be, I had nothing to hide. I'll say this, and I'll go a different direction with this. A lot of people ask me what I regret, and I think if there's any regrets, and I think that's something that, not many people are vulnerable enough to talk about that. So I'll go in that way. So nobody will know because nobody knows what I regret. I regret not journaling more in my career, not writing down the experiences that I got to experience, the friendships, the people that I came in contact with. I regret not writing those down because the moments are fleeting and those moments you forget and they become blurry. And there's a lot of cool people that I got to interact with and talk with that, whether I don't remember it or I've never been able to keep in contact with them, or I know I heard this from somebody, but I don't remember who it was. I wish I wrote more of that stuff down. So it was documented.
That's what makes, I'm guessing, times getting back together with your old teammates so special.
Absolutely.
They remember things. You remember things probably about them, and it triggers stuff. And
no doubt. Powerful
for everybody, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you joining our coaches clinic. And
absolutely.
January 12th to the 13th at Target Field is going to be quite a time for a whole bunch of great Upper Midwest coaches to get together. And again, Michael, thank you so much. And I look forward to sometime talking to you about outfield play down the road. So
anytime. And I hope everybody enjoys the conference and just the ability for 2 days to be able to talk the game amongst your friends.
Here's Farnsworth's pitch, and here's a high drive, deep left center field.
way back and gone. Touch 'em all, Michael Cuddyer. Home run number 2 in the inning. And home run number 22 on the year for Michael Cuddyer. Wow, was that a blast